The recipe for love. The warm afternoon light filtered through the windows of David's small apartment kitchen, casting golden shadows across the worn wooden countertops. Copper pots hung from hooks above the stove, and mason jars filled with dried herbs lined the windowsill. This wasn't the gleaming kitchen of a fancy restaurant, but it was home. Every scratch on the cutting board, every stain on the apron hanging by the door, told the story of countless meals prepared with love. David Mitchell wiped his hands on a dish towel and glanced at the clock. 3:30. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, would be home from kindergarten soon, full of stories about her day and ready for her favorite after-school snack. Being a single father and a chef meant his life revolved around two kitchens, the professional one where he worked long hours to pay the bills, and this one where he created the moments that truly mattered. The soft creak of footsteps in the hallway outside caught his attention, but they were too heavy to be Lily's. Then came an unexpected sound that made him pause, the desperate cry of a baby, muffled but unmistakably distressed. David had heard that sound countless times when Lily was an infant, and his parental instincts kicked in immediately. The crying grew louder, more frantic. Someone was struggling just outside his door. David opened his apartment door to find a well-dressed woman in an expensive navy blazer standing in the hallway, holding a red-faced wailing toddler. The woman's blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless despite the obvious stress in her eyes. Everything about her appearance spoke of success and control, except for the helpless way she was trying to soothe the inconsolable child in her arms. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, noticing David in the doorway. "I know this is disturbing everyone. I'm Emma Harris. I just moved into 4B. This is my daughter Sophie, and I can't seem to ... double quotes. Her voice trailed off as tears of frustration began to well in her eyes. David recognized the look of a parent at the end of their rope. "How old is she?" he asked gently. 18 months, Emma replied, bouncing Sophie in what she hoped was a soothing motion. "She's been crying for 2 hours. I've tried everything. Her bottle, changing her diaper, walking with her, singing. Nothing works. I called her nanny, but she's out of town. I called my mother, but she's in Paris on business. I don't know what else to do." The baby's cries echoed through the narrow hallway, and David could see other apartment doors opening slightly as neighbors peered out with annoyed expressions. Emma noticed too, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "Why don't you come inside?" David offered. "Sometimes a change of environment helps. I'm David, by the way. I have a daughter too." Emma hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between accepting help from a stranger and continuing to struggle alone. Sophie's renewed wailing made the decision for her. "Thank you," she said gratefully. "I don't usually. I mean, I can handle things on my own, but today ... David stepped aside to let them in, and Emma entered his cozy kitchen with obvious relief. The warm, herb-scented air seemed to have an immediate calming effect on both mother and child. Sophie's cries softened to whimpers as she looked around at the unfamiliar surroundings. "She might be hungry," David suggested, noting the time. "Sometimes at this age, they go through growth spurts and need to eat more frequently." "I tried her bottle," Emma said wearily. "She just pushed it away." David moved to his refrigerator and pulled out several ingredients: a ripe banana, some whole milk yogurt, and a jar of honey he kept for special occasions. "Sometimes babies get bored with the same foods. Mind if I try something?" Emma watched as David began mashing the banana with a fork, his movements confident and practiced. He added a small spoonful of yogurt and just a tiny drizzle of honey, mixing everything together until it formed a smooth, creamy consistency. The simple act of watching someone else take charge seemed to ease some of the tension from Emma's shoulders. This was Lily's favorite. When she was Sophie's age, David explained, testing the temperature and texture. "My grandmother's recipe. Actually, she always said the secret was making it with love, not just ingredients." He pulled a small spoon from a drawer and offered it to Sophie, who had grown quiet in her mother's arms, watching his movements with curious eyes. The toddler tentatively tasted the mixture, then opened her mouth eagerly for more. "Oh my goodness," Emma whispered as Sophie began eating happily. "How did you ... I've been trying everything, and you just ... experience," David said with a gentle smile. "And maybe a little bit of magic. My grandmother used to make this for me when I was upset as a kid. There's something about the combination that's both familiar and special." As Sophie continued eating, the transformation in the room was remarkable. The stress lines around Emma's eyes began to soften, and she allowed herself to sink into one of David's kitchen chairs. For the first time in hours she could breathe. "I feel like such a failure," Emma admitted quietly. "I run a multi-million-dollar company. I make decisions that affect thousands of people every day, but I can't figure out how to feed my own daughter." David continued feeding Sophie, who was now making happy humming sounds between bites. "Being a parent is completely different from any other job," he said. "Success in business doesn't automatically translate to success in the kitchen or the nursery. I learned that the hard way when Lily was born." "You're a single parent too?" Emma asked. David nodded. "Lily's mom left when she was 6 months old. Said the whole domestic thing wasn't for her. It was just me and Lily from then on." Emma studied David's profile as he interacted with her daughter. There was something incredibly gentle about the way he spoke to Sophie. the patience in his movements as he waited for her to finish each spoonful. This was a man who had learned to nurture through necessity and had discovered he was naturally gifted at it. "What do you do for work?" Emma asked. "I am a chef," David replied. "I work at a small bistro downtown. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I get to do what I love." Something in Emma's expression shifted. "Mitchell, David Mitchell, you're the chef at Bellecourt, aren't you?" David looked surprised. "You know the place. I've eaten there several times. Your butternut squash risotto is incredible. I had no idea you lived in my building." As Sophie finished the last of her impromptu meal, she reached out toward David with sticky fingers, babbling contentedly. He gently wiped her hands with a damp towel, then offered her a small sip of water from a sippy cup he pulled from his cabinet, clearly a leftover from Lily's younger years. Emma watched this interaction with growing emotion. Here was a man who had anticipated her child's needs before she had even recognized them herself. He had solutions she didn't know existed, patience she had run out of, and a natural warmth that made even her usually fussy daughter bloom. "I don't know how to thank you," Emma said, her voice thick with gratitude. "You saved my sanity today." "No thanks necessary," David replied. "We parents have to stick together." Emma looked around the cozy kitchen, taking in the evidence of a life built around love and care rather than ambition and acquisition. The hand-drawn pictures on the refrigerator, the child-height step stool by the sink, the patient way David had handled her crisis without judgment or hesitation. "David," she said softly, "would you mind if I asked you something? Of course, would you consider giving me some cooking lessons? I travel so much for work that I've never learned to cook properly, but watching you with Sophie today, I realize I want to be the kind of mother who knows how to comfort her child with more than just expensive gifts." David smiled, the same gentle expression that had calmed Sophie's tears. "I'd be honored to teach you. Food is love in its most basic form, and every child deserves to grow up tasting that love." As Emma gathered Sophie to leave, the toddler reached back toward David, making soft babbling sounds that clearly meant she didn't want to go. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of frustration or failure. They were tears of recognition. She had spent years building a business empire, accumulating wealth and power that most people could only dream of, but watching a single father transform her daughter's distress into contentment, with nothing more than mashed bananas and genuine care, she realized she had been measuring success by the wrong standards entirely. "Same time tomorrow?" David asked as they reached the door. "Same time tomorrow," Emma agreed, knowing that this simple afternoon had changed something fundamental about the life she wanted to build for herself and her daughter. Sometimes the most important recipes couldn't be found in cookbooks or corporate boardrooms. Sometimes they were discovered in the gentle wisdom of a neighbor who understood that love, like the perfect meal, was made from simple ingredients combined with infinite care.